Tessa, I gave everything to your brother." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. The words felt alien, like they belonged in someone else's nightmare, not mine. I tightened my grip on the phone, the sharp edge of betrayal slicing through me. My father's voice was calm. Too calm, as if he weren't dismantling the last 20 years of my life in a single breath, as if everything we had built together meant nothing. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat. Outside my office window, the city blurred as my mind scrambled to process the implications. Mitchell Enterprises, the empire we had created, the one I had bled for, was no longer mine. I had spent years believing I was the backbone of the company, that my father saw me as his equal, that I would be the one to carry on our legacy. I was wrong. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, my voice disturbingly steady. He hesitated, caught off guard. Maybe he expected a scream, a plea, a fight. But I gave him nothing. "Tessa, I know this might seem unfair." I hung up. The silence in my office was suffocating. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me like a collapsing roof. But then, something shifted, a slow, deliberate inhale. The fire inside me flickered, then flared. He thought this was over. He was wrong. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was my father's dream, yes, but it was my life. I had been there from the beginning, side by side with him as we clawed our way up from nothing. At 19, I officially joined the company. He had the vision, I made it scalable. I developed our investment strategies, expanded the portfolio, and pulled us back from the edge of collapse, over and over again. But something had changed this past year. Key meetings began happening without me. Financial reports stopped landing on my desk. Decisions were made behind closed doors, by my brother Liam. The golden child, the son my father always wanted. While I spent my 20s in boardrooms and late-night investor meetings, Liam was partying in Ibiza and torching trust fund money like it would never run out. He never cared about the company, never earned a place in it. But now, my father had chosen him. I should have seen it coming. The missing reports. The hushed conversations between Dad and his lawyers. The sudden, convenient interest Liam had developed in the business. I was too busy running the damn company to notice the ground shifting under my feet. Now they thought they'd won. I stared at the mahogany desk in front of me, fingers tapping rhythmically. My mind spun, calculating. Years of contracts, legal loopholes, buried contingencies. What they didn't know was that I had never played this game blindly. I reached for the black notebook in my drawer. The real records, kept separate from the official books, every major decision, every hidden liability, every backroom deal my father made. All documented, all in my hands. If he thought he could push me out and walk away clean, he had underestimated me. I had built this company with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. I knew every weak spot, every pressure point, and I wasn't going to let them win. Leaning back, I stared out at the skyline. This city had always been my battleground, and my father had made his second mistake, assuming I would crumble. I wasn't mourning a loss, I was preparing for war. With one final glance at my phone, I stood and adjusted the sleeves of my blazer. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I left the office early. Not because I was overwhelmed, not to process. I needed space to think. Truth was, I had seen this coming. Driving in silence, my knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. The streets of Austin blurred past, a city I'd helped shape, now unfamiliar and cold. My father had cut me out. Liam had won. Or so they thought. I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and sat there, staring into the quiet. The house was empty because I had never had time to fill it, while others built families, took trips, lived. I was working 16-hour days, keeping Mitchell Enterprises alive. And now? Now they expected me to walk away with nothing, but that's not how this story ends. I walked inside, tossed my keys on the counter, and made my way to the study books lined the walls. Business strategy, negotiation, leadership, the foundations of my life. But tonight, they felt like relics of a world I no longer belonged to. Not yet, anyway. I grabbed the one thing that had never let me down. My notebook. Its black leather cover felt like armor in my hands, worn at the edges, pages crammed with nearly a decade of notes, backdoor deals, and whispered conversations I was never meant to hear. Buried in those lines were hidden accounts, unrecorded transactions, and every shadowy deal my father thought he'd kept secret. But I had seen it all, documented it. Filed it away. If my father had taught me anything, it was this. Power didn't belong to the one who built the biggest empire. It belonged to the one who knew exactly how to burn it to the ground. My mind flicked back to childhood. To his lessons. Grit, loyalty, perseverance. He'd built me up with stories of how he'd clawed his way to the top. How family meant everything, how you had to earn your place. But when the time came to honor that creed, he gave it all to Liam. Liam, who had done nothing but inherit a last name. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect. And he had made one fatal error. He underestimated me. I picked up my phone, scrolling until I found the name I needed. Ethan Carter, my father's oldest friend. The man who had helped him secure his first round of funding back when Mitchell Enterprises was just an idea scribbled on a bar napkin. Ethan had always seen me, even when my father didn't. I hit call. Tessa. He answered almost instantly. His voice was warm, but there was an edge. Caution. It's been a while. I need to meet, I said. It's about my father. A pause, then a sigh. I figured something was going on. Meet me at the club. 1 hour. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and headed out. If my father had rewritten the rules, then so would I. The private club hadn't changed, still full of old money men who had built their empires from grit, luck, or ruthless strategy. Ethan sat in the back corner, nursing a glass of whiskey, eyes sharp and expectant as I approached. So, he said, swirling the glass, tell me what happened. I didn't sugarcoat it. I laid it all out. My father's call, the betrayal, the transfer of power to Liam, and the insult buried beneath it all. Ethan listened in silence, nodding now and then, his expression unreadable. And what do you want from me? He asked finally. I leaned forward. I want to build something better, and I want to make sure my father and Liam understand exactly what they lost. He studied me for a moment, then he chuckled. Your father always said you had my ruthlessness. Then you know I don't lose. He nodded slowly. All right, Tessa. Tell me your plan. I exhaled, the fire inside me stoked hotter than ever. He took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from him. Ethan leaned back, eyes scanning me like I was a prospectus on the brink of becoming very profitable, or very dangerous. You know, he said, sipping slowly, your father would call this a betrayal. I let out a dry laugh. Funny, I thought betrayal was cutting your own daughter out of the company she built. He smirked. Touché. I folded my hands calmly. This isn't about revenge, Ethan. I want to build something that makes Mitchell Enterprises look like a fossil, an afterthought. He set his drink down. Then let's talk strategy. If the business world had taught me anything, it was this. Power doesn't come from ownership, it comes from control. And despite what my father believed, I still controlled more than he realized. I pulled out my phone and brought up my notes. Mitchell Enterprises is vulnerable right now. They're over-leveraged, trying to expand too quickly. They've dumped millions into acquisitions without having the infrastructure to support them. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And how do you know that? I met his gaze evenly. Because I built the infrastructure. Silence. Then a flicker of admiration crossed his face. I know where the cracks are, I continued. And if those cracks get just a little wider, the whole thing crumbles. Ethan let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. So you're not going to attack them head-on? No, I said, smiling coldly. I'm going to let them destroy themselves. Mitchell Enterprises had spent the last year making aggressive investments. Real estate, manufacturing, supply chain logistics. But my father and Liam weren't visionaries. They didn't understand the industries they were diving into. They were operating on blind ambition, assuming their name alone was enough to guarantee success. It wasn't. So, what happens when Mitchell Enterprises starts to struggle? Ethan asked, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. That's when I make my move. Revenge wasn't enough. I wanted more than that. I wanted to prove that I wasn't some expendable asset my father could discard. I wanted to show them that cutting me out was the worst mistake they had ever made. I needed funding. I needed resources. And most importantly, I needed the right people. I want to start my own firm, I said. Something lean, strategic, focused on acquisitions that actually make sense, not just flashy headlines, and I want to poach the best people from Mitchell Enterprises. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. You really are your father's daughter. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, I'm better. I had spent years inside Mitchell Enterprises, building the best teams, training the sharpest minds. They trusted me. They didn't respect Liam. And if given the choice, I knew exactly where their loyalty would lie. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with interest. Let me guess. You already have names. I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a list of top executives, project managers, and financial analysts, the backbone of Mitchell Enterprises. These are the people who actually keep the company running, I said, and I guarantee you, half of them would walk if given the right opportunity. Ethan whistled. You don't waste time, do you? I don't have time to waste. Ethan leaned back, considering. All right, Tessa, I'm in. That's all I needed. Within a week, I had secured initial funding. Ethan introduced me to investors eager to back a competitor to Mitchell Enterprises, especially one that knew exactly how to dismantle it from the inside. The first person I called was Danielle Carter, the company's head of risk management. She had been my mentor for years, someone who had seen firsthand how much I had built. Tessa, she answered on the first ring. I heard what happened. It's absolute. I'm starting something new, I told her. I want you with me. There was a beat of silence before she said, Tell me where to sign. One by one, the pieces started falling into place. By the end of the week, I had 4 key people. By the end of the month, I had 10. And the best part? My father didn't even see it coming. They thought I'd disappear. They were wrong. I sat in my new office, staring at the official incorporation papers for my new firm. Mitchell Enterprises had taken everything from me, but now I had built something better. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my father's number. For a moment, I considered calling him, letting him know exactly what I was about to do. But then I smiled to myself and put the phone down. He'd find out soon enough. The first domino had fallen. Over the next few weeks, the momentum I had built turned into something unstoppable. More people were leaving Mitchell Enterprises, some quietly, some with dramatic exits, but all of them with one goal in mind, to work with me. I didn't poach aggressively. I didn't have to. I knew exactly who felt undervalued, who was frustrated with Liam's incompetence, and who wanted out before the company collapsed under its own weight. And the collapse was coming. I had watched my father run the company for years, always believing that loyalty and legacy mattered more than strategy and innovation. That mindset had worked when I was there to balance him out. But with Liam at the helm, it was a ticking time bomb. The first real hit to Mitchell Enterprises came in the form of a botched acquisition. For months, the company had been in talks to acquire Harlan Tech, a mid-sized logistics company that would have expanded their control over supply chain operations. It was a high-stakes move, one I had originally spearheaded before my father cut me out. Now, Liam had taken over negotiations and screwed up royally. The headlines came first. Mitchell Enterprises fumbles key acquisition as CEO's son mismanages deal. Harlan Tech walks away, cites leadership concerns at Mitchell Enterprises. I read every article with quiet satisfaction. Liam had overpromised, miscalculated, and ultimately pushed Harlan Tech into a deal with another firm, a firm I had personally advised on the acquisition, a firm that was now aligned with me. It wasn't enough to destroy Mitchell Enterprises. Not yet. But it was the first public crack in their foundation, and I knew my father was watching it all unfold. 2 days after the Harlan Tech failure, the call came. My phone buzzed as I sat in my office, going over the latest expansion plans for my own firm. I glanced at the screen. Dad. I let it ring, but just as it was about to go to voicemail, I answered. Tessa. His voice was tight, controlled, but the tension was unmistakable. I assume you've seen the news? I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile playing at my lips. I have. There was a pause. Did you have something to do with this? I exhaled softly, letting the silence stretch between us. Dad, I said finally, you made it very clear I was out. Why would I have anything to do with Mitchell Enterprises? He sighed. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. We need to talk. There it was, the first sign of regret. But I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. I'm busy, I said smoothly. You'll have to find another time. Before he could respond, I ended the call. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking away from him. It wasn't just me enjoying the show. A text from Danielle Carter lit up my phone. My former mentor, now one of my closest allies. Danielle, Liam's losing it. He called an emergency meeting today and blamed internal sabotage. People are starting to question if he even knows what he's doing. I smirked. Of course, Liam was panicking. He had never handled pressure well, and now, with the press scrutinizing him, investors getting nervous, and key employees walking away, he was drowning. And I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just targeting Liam. I was targeting my father's legacy. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was an institution, built on decades of reputation. My father's ability to convince everyone that the Mitchell name never failed. But that was exactly what was happening. And all I had to do was let the weight of their own mistakes pull them under. I made my next move. I called Ethan. It's time, I said. You're sure? He asked. Liam is cracking. My father is doubting him. Investors are getting nervous. If we move now, we can take some of their biggest contracts before they even see it coming. Ethan let out a low chuckle. You really are ruthless, Tessa. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I learned from the best. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait. The next phase was simple. Destabilize Mitchell Enterprises further, secure key contracts before they could, and wait for my father to realize exactly what he had done. I had spent years being the perfect daughter, the loyal heir, the quiet strategist behind the scenes. Not anymore. Now I was going to watch them burn. Liam was drowning. I watched from a distance as Mitchell Enterprises, once a powerhouse, once my legacy, began to collapse under the weight of his incompetence. It started slow, a missed deadline here, an underperforming quarter there. But then it spiraled, and I made sure I was there to speed up the process. After the Harlan Tech deal fell through, Mitchell Enterprises lost more than just a business acquisition. They lost credibility. Investors weren't just concerned anymore. They were scared. Then came the departures. At first, it was just a few executives, the ones I had personally recruited to my new firm. But soon, the floodgates opened. Key managers, the ones who actually kept the company running, started leaving. Clients hesitated. Contracts that had once been guarantees suddenly weren't renewed. Investors started calling my father directly, demanding answers. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a finger. Liam was ruining the company all on his own. The second call from my father came late at night. I was in my office, reviewing a contract for my firm's latest acquisition, one that had once been Mitchell Enterprises' biggest asset. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. Dad. His voice was different this time. No anger, no arrogance, just desperation. Tessa, listen, we need to talk in person. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk. What for? A long pause, then a heavy sigh. Liam is struggling. The board is concerned. There are financial issues that need addressing. Financial issues? That was putting it lightly. The truth was, Mitchell Enterprises was bleeding money. Every failed deal, every bad decision Liam made, chipped away at the foundation. And you think I can help? I asked, feigning innocence. Tessa, please. My father's voice dropped to something almost unfamiliar. I know you're angry, but you're still part of this family. You've always been the smartest one. We need you. There it was. The first time my father was admitting what I had always known to be true. But it was too late. We met at his office the next morning. The tension in the room was suffocating. Liam was already there, sitting stiffly beside my father's desk. His face was pale, the usual cocky smirk nowhere to be found. He knew. They both knew. "Tessa," my father began, "we need to restructure the company. The losses have been significant," I interrupted, folding my arms across my chest. A long pause. Then he slid a folder across the desk. I opened it, and there it was. Mitchell Enterprises on the verge of bankruptcy. My father, the man who had built an empire from nothing, had let it crumble in less than a year because he had handed everything to the wrong person. I closed the folder and met his eyes. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated, then quietly, almost painfully, he said, "Come back. Help us fix this." I could have laughed. I could have thrown the folder back at him and walked out. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, savoring the shift in power. Liam, the golden child, was silent now. No arrogance, no entitlement. Just fear. "And if I don't?" I asked, watching my father carefully. He exhaled, then said the words I had been waiting for. "Then we lose everything." I tapped my nails against the folder. This was it, the moment I had waited for. They had underestimated me, discarded me, and now they were begging for my help. "I'll think about it," I said smoothly, standing up. Liam's head snapped up. "Wait, what?" "She can do whatever she wants," my father cut in, his voice tight. Liam's mouth clamped shut. I turned and walked out of the room, and for the first time, I wasn't the one walking away from them. I had already won, and they still had no idea what I was going to do next. I didn't go back to Mitchell Enterprises. I didn't return their calls. I didn't respond to their emails. I didn't even acknowledge the carefully worded letters my father sent, each one more desperate than the last. I let them wait. Let them wonder. And while they were drowning in uncertainty, scrambling to fix the mess they had created, I made my final move. 1 month after that meeting, the news broke. Mitchell Enterprises officially files for bankruptcy amid leadership crisis. The article was brutal. It detailed everything: the failed acquisitions, the mass departures, the fractured leadership. Liam's name was plastered across every headline, the face of the company's downfall. But the part that interested me the most? The section about their assets. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just collapsing, it was being sold for parts, and I had been waiting for this moment. I sat in a sleek, modern conference room, watching as a team of lawyers and advisors finalized the paperwork in front of me. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding within Mitchell Enterprises. My lawyer slid the final contract across the table. "It's official," he said. "Your firm now owns Mitchell Enterprises' most valuable assets." I picked up the pen and signed my name. That was it. Just like that, I had taken everything my father built, without him even realizing it was happening. Liam thought he was playing a game of power. My father thought he was preserving his legacy. But the truth was, they had been playing checkers while I was playing chess. I didn't just take the company. I took the best clients, the most profitable divisions, the people who had built the business in the first place. And what was left? A hollow shell, a name with no value, a legacy that no longer belonged to them. I didn't expect my father to reach out again, but he did. I was in my office when my assistant knocked. "Miss Mitchell," she said cautiously, "your father is here." I looked up from my desk. I hadn't seen him in weeks. "Send him in." When he walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked older, more tired, like a man who had finally realized just how much he had lost. He stood there for a moment, taking in my office, my new company, my success. "You really did it," he finally said. "I did." A long silence stretched between us. "You could have helped," he said. "You could have come back. We could have fixed it together." I leaned back in my chair. "No, Dad. You could have fixed it, but you didn't want to. You wanted Liam to be the golden child. You wanted to prove that I wasn't necessary." And now, I gestured around the room. "You finally understand what I always knew. It was never about the name. It was never about the company. It was about the people who built it." His jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to justify, to make excuses. But he couldn't. because he knew I was right. "I made a mistake," he muttered, his voice barely audible. For a brief second, something flickered inside me. A piece of me, the daughter who had once idolized him, wanted to forgive. But then I remembered the way he had cast me aside. I remembered every moment I spent proving myself only to be told I was never enough. And so, I said nothing. Finally, he nodded, a silent admission of defeat. Without another word, he turned and walked out of my office. This time, I didn't look back. I never needed Mitchell Enterprises. I never needed my father's approval. What I needed was the freedom to build something of my own. And that's exactly what I did. Power isn't given. It's taken. And in the end, I took everything.